The scream tore through the air like shattered glass. 3-year-old Zuri Johnson's wail escalated from distress to raw terror as she watched uniformed officers handcuff her mother. Her small hands reached desperately toward Amara, who struggled to maintain composure despite the cold metal biting into her wrists. "Please, my daughter, she's just a baby. Let me explain." Amara's voice cracked as an officer gripped her elbow, steering her toward the waiting police cruiser. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Oakwood Park, transforming what had been a perfect spring day into a nightmare. "Zuri, it's okay, baby. Mommy will be right back." But Zuri couldn't hear her mother's reassurances over her own screams. A female officer attempted to calm the child, but Zuri thrashed violently in her grip, her face contorted with anguish. "Ma'am, you're being detained for child endangerment and neglect," the officer beside Amara stated flatly, his voice carrying across the now silent playground where other parents had frozen in horror. Phones raised to record the unfolding scene. "We received a report that your child was wandering alone for over 20 minutes without supervision." "That's not true," Amara protested, struggling to look back at her daughter as she was guided toward the patrol car. "I was right there the whole time. Ask anyone." "You can explain at the station," the officer interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. Behind them, standing with arms crossed in righteous vindication, a thin-lipped white woman in designer athleisure wear watched with narrowed eyes. As the car door slammed shut, sealing Amara off from her daughter's cries, she caught the woman's self-satisfied smile. In that moment, Amara knew exactly who had made the call. Just 40 minutes earlier, Amara had been enjoying one of those rare, perfect moments of motherhood. Seated on a bench beneath a sprawling oak tree, she watched Zuri conquer the playground with the determined focus only a toddler can muster. The little girl's braids bounced as she climbed the small ladder to the slide, her face a portrait of concentration. "Mommy, watch me," Zuri called, positioning herself at the top of the slide, her favorite purple overalls already smudged with dirt from an earlier tumble that she'd brushed off with characteristic resilience. "I see you. Baby, you're so brave," Amara responded, raising her phone to capture the moment. Zuri had only recently overcome her fear of the big kid slide, and each successful descent was worth documenting. Single motherhood wasn't easy, but moments like these, watching her daughter's face light up with accomplishment, made every struggle worthwhile. Oakwood Park had become their Sunday afternoon ritual. Located just 3 blocks from their apartment, it offered a welcome respite from the cramped 2-bedroom they called home. Amara had moved to Westlake Heights 18 months ago after accepting a position as a pediatric nurse at the community hospital. The neighborhood was several steps up from their previous one: safer streets, better schools, and this beautiful park with well-maintained equipment. Despite being one of only a handful of black families in the predominantly white suburban enclave, Amara had hoped the benefits would outweigh any discomfort. Most days, she convinced herself she'd made the right choice. Today would challenge that belief to its core. Amara glanced at her watch. She had promised Zuri an ice cream from the vendor, who parked his cart at the park entrance on warm days, but only after 30 more minutes of play. Her phone buzzed with a text notification from the hospital's scheduling coordinator, asking if she could cover an extra shift that week. Single motherhood meant constant financial pressure. Extra shifts were rarely turned down. While she typed a quick reply, her attention divided momentarily. Zuri had completed 3 more trips down the slide and had moved on to the sandbox. This transition happened just as Karen Mitchell arrived at the park with her immaculately dressed 7-year-old twins. Amara had encountered Karen several times before at the neighborhood association meeting, where Karen had pointedly asked whether Amara was a homeowner or just renting. At the grocery store, where Karen had scrutinized Amara's WIC vouchers with poorly disguised contempt. And, most recently, at the elementary school open house where Karen, as PTA president, had somehow forgotten to include Amara on the email list for volunteer opportunities. Karen settled onto a bench on the opposite side of the playground. Designer sunglasses perched on her nose, scrolling through her phone while occasionally barking instructions at her children. Amara returned her attention to her own response, confirming she could take the Thursday night shift if childcare could be arranged. When she looked up less than 2 minutes later, she scanned the playground for Zuri's purple overalls. Not at the slide. Not at the swings. A flutter of panic rose in her chest as she stood, eyes darting around the playground equipment. "Zuri," she called, walking briskly toward the sandbox where she'd last seen her daughter. The sandbox was empty, except for abandoned plastic shovels. "Zuri." The park wasn't large, but to a panicked mother, it suddenly seemed vast. Amara moved quickly, checking behind the large climbing structure and around the swing set. Relief flooded through her when she spotted a flash of purple by the drinking fountain just 20 yards away. Zuri was attempting to press the button for water, standing on tiptoes with determined focus. "Zuri, baby, you can't walk away like that," Amara said, hurrying over and kneeling beside her daughter. "You scared Mommy." "I'm thirsty," Zuri explained simply, still struggling with the button. Amara helped her, lifting her slightly so she could take a drink from the fountain. "Next time, you need to ask me first. Okay, we always stay where we can see each other." Zuri nodded solemnly, water dripping from her chin. "Can we get ice cream now?" 10 more minutes of play, then ice cream," Amara reminded her, guiding her back toward the playground. As they walked hand in hand, Amara noticed Karen watching them intently, phone held at an angle that suggested she was either taking photos or recording. Amara felt a familiar discomfort crawl up her spine, but pushed it aside. She wouldn't let someone else's strange behavior ruin their park day. Zuri returned to the sandbox, and Amara resumed her seat on the bench, this time keeping her phone in her pocket and her eyes fixed on her daughter. She didn't notice Karen slip away from her own bench, twins in tow, nor did she see her standing at the park's edge, speaking urgently into her phone. 10 minutes later, as promised, Amara was helping Zuri brush sand from her clothes in preparation for their ice cream treat when the first police cruiser pulled up to the curb. "Mommy?" "Police." Zuri pointed excitedly. Like many children her age, she found the flashing lights fascinating rather than frightening. That innocence wouldn't last the hour. Amara watched curiously as 2 officers emerged from the vehicle, scanning the park with purposeful gazes. When their eyes locked on her and Zuri, something in their determined stride sent a warning signal through her body. Instinctively, she placed a protective hand on Zuri's shoulder. "Good afternoon, ma'am," the older officer said as they approached. His name badge read, "Officer Pearson. We received a call about an unattended child in the park. Would that be your daughter?" Amara blinked in confusion. "My daughter hasn't been unattended. We've been here together for the past hour." The second officer, younger, with a closely cropped haircut and name badge reading Officer Davis, stepped slightly forward. "We have a witness who claims the child was wandering alone for approximately 20 minutes while you were distracted on your phone." The witness expressed concern for the child's safety near the water fountain, which, as you know, is close to the street. Amara felt her chest tighten. "That's absolutely not true. My daughter walked to the water fountain, yes, but I noticed immediately, and it was less than a minute before I was with her. I've been watching her the entire time we've been here, Officer Pearson's expression remained impassive. Ma'am, the witness provided video documentation of the child alone for an extended period. At that moment, Amara spotted Karen standing near the park entrance, her twins clutching ice cream cones while she watched the interaction with undisguised interest. The realization crashed over Amara with sickening clarity. Was she your witness? Amara asked, nodding toward Karen. Because that woman has had an issue with me since I moved to this neighborhood. And if she's claiming my child was alone for 20 minutes, she's lying. Officer Davis's posture stiffened. Ma'am, please calm down. We're just following up on the report. I am calm, Amara replied, acutely aware of how quickly a black woman's reasonable assertion could be labeled as aggression. I'm simply stating facts. My daughter was never out of my sight for more than a minute. If that. Zuri, sensing the tension, pressed against Amara's leg. Mommy, ice cream, she whispered, confused by the delay in their promised treat. Officer Pearson crouched down to Zuri's level. Hi there, sweetie. Were you playing all by yourself today? Before Amara could intervene, Zuri shook her head. Mommy watches me on the slide. I went to get water because I was thirsty. Did you go get water by yourself? The officer pressed. Zuri nodded proudly. I'm a big girl. Officer Pearson straightened, exchanging a glance with his partner that made Amara's stomach drop. Ma'am, given the witness statement and your daughter's confirmation that she was alone at the water fountain, we're concerned about adequate supervision. She wasn't alone, Amara insisted, struggling to keep her voice steady. She walked ahead of me, and I followed immediately. Ask anyone else who was here. But as Amara looked around for support, she realized most of the other parents had gathered their children and moved to the opposite side of the playground, watching from a distance. No one stepped forward. I'd like to see this video your witness claims to have, Amara said firmly. That will be reviewed as part of our investigation, Officer Davis replied. For now, we need to file a report. May I see your identification? Amara reached for her purse with trembling hands, knowing what a simple park outing had suddenly become. As she handed over her driver's license, a second police cruiser pulled up to the curb. What's happening? She asked, fear creeping into her voice as she watched two additional officers approach. Based on the report we received and our initial assessment, we have concerns about child endangerment. Officer Pearson stated, We're going to need you to come with us to the station to answer some questions. This is ridiculous, Amara exclaimed, instinctively pulling Zuri closer. You're taking me in because my 3-year-old walked 20 feet to a water fountain while I was still watching her. Ma'am, please lower your voice and cooperate, Officer Davis warned, his hand moving to rest on his belt in a gesture Amara didn't miss. What about my daughter? Amara asked, panic rising as the reality of the situation set in. Child Protective Services has been notified. They'll take temporary custody while we sort this out. The words hit Amara with physical force. No, absolutely not. She stays with me or goes to my sister. You are not taking my child. Unfortunately, that's not your decision right now, Officer Pearson said, and then nodded to the female officer who had arrived in the second car. Officer Wilson will stay with your daughter until CPS arrives. What followed unfolded with a nightmarish quality that would haunt Amara for months to come. As Officer Davis recited her Miranda rights, Zuri began to understand that something was terribly wrong. When the handcuffs came out, her confusion erupted into terror. No, don't take my mommy, Zuri screamed, clinging to Amara's legs with surprising strength for a child her size. Officer Wilson attempted to gently pry her away, triggering the heart-wrenching wails that drew the attention of everyone within earshot. "Please," Amara begged, tears now flowing freely. "She's terrified. Let me at least call my sister to come get her. She lives 15 minutes away." But protocol had been engaged, and the machine of the system ground forward with cold efficiency. As Amara was escorted to the police cruiser, she caught a final glimpse of Karen Mitchell, who had moved closer to observe the scene. Their eyes met briefly, and in that moment, Amara saw not triumph, but something more disturbing: righteousness, as if Karen genuinely believed she had done something heroic. The last sound Amara heard before the car door closed was Zuri's desperate cries calling for her mother. The processing room at the police station smelled of industrial disinfectant and stale coffee. Amara sat rigidly in an uncomfortable metal chair, her nurse's badge still clipped to her purse, a cruel reminder of how quickly one's identity could be stripped away. Just hours ago, she had been Amara Johnson, respected pediatric nurse and devoted mother. Now she was a case number, a suspect, a statistic. "Ms. Johnson, I'm Detective Rivera," a woman in plain clothes announced as she entered the room, file folder in hand. "I'll be handling your case." "Where is my daughter?" Amara asked immediately. It had been over an hour since they'd been separated. "She's with a social worker from CPS. They're attempting to contact your sister based on the information you provided." "May I call her myself? Zuri doesn't know these people. She must be terrified." Detective Rivera considered the request. "After we complete the initial interview, we can arrange a call." She opened the folder and spread several documents on the table. "I need to ask you some questions about what happened at Oakwood Park today." For the next 45 minutes, Amara recounted the afternoon in excruciating detail. She described their regular park routine, the brief moment when Zuri had walked to the water fountain, and her immediate response. She explained her history with Karen Mitchell, careful to stick to documented interactions rather than assumptions about motivation. "Ms. Mitchell provided a video that shows your daughter alone at the water fountain, which is approximately 50 feet from where you were seated," Detective Rivera stated, sliding still images extracted from a video across the table. Amara examined the images. They indeed showed Zuri at the water fountain alone, but provided no context for how long she had been there or whether Amara was watching. "These images don't show whether I was watching her or how quickly I responded," Amara pointed out, "and they certainly don't prove she was alone for 20 minutes as Ms. Mitchell claimed." The witness statement indicates, "The witness has a history of targeting me," Amara interrupted, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Did anyone bother to check the timestamps on these photos or verify her claims with other parents at the park?" Detective Rivera's expression revealed nothing. "We're conducting a thorough investigation, Ms. Johnson. Right now, we have conflicting accounts of the incident." "What about my account?" a new voice interjected. Both women turned to see a uniformed officer at the door, accompanied by a young man with glasses and a laptop bag slung over his shoulder. "This gentleman insists on speaking with you, Detective," the officer explained. "Says he has relevant information about the Johnson case." The young man stepped forward, extending his hand. "Michael Chen. I was at Oakwood Park this afternoon with my dog. I saw everything that happened, and I have video that might help clarify the timeline." Detective Rivera's eyebrows rose slightly. "Mr. Chen, I'll need to take your statement officially. But first, Can you briefly explain what you witnessed? Michael nodded earnestly. I was sitting near the dog park section, which has a clear view of the main playground. I often take videos of my dog playing, and my camera caught the background activity too. He pulled out his phone. I have footage that shows Ms. Johnson watching her daughter the entire time, including when the little girl went to the water fountain. Ms. Johnson got up almost immediately and joined her daughter within seconds. Hope surged through Amara so powerfully she felt lightheaded. And you're certain of the timing? Detective Rivera asked. My videos are time-stamped. The entire incident from when the little girl walked to the fountain until her mother joined her was less than 40 seconds. Nowhere near the 20 minutes claimed in your report. Detective Rivera's professional demeanor didn't waver, but something in her posture shifted. We'll need to review your footage officially. Officer Diaz will take your statement and make a copy of the video. After Michael left with the officer, Detective Rivera turned back to Amara with a slightly softened expression. Ms. Johnson, we still need to complete the process, but this new evidence will certainly be considered. I want to call my sister now, Amara stated firmly, and I want to know exactly when I can see my daughter. The detective nodded. Let's arrange that call. Blow! Desiree Johnson arrived at the police station like a force of nature. At 5'10", in flat shoes, and with the confident bearing that came from 15 years as a corporate attorney. She commanded attention the moment she stepped through the door. I'm here for my sister, Amara Johnson, she announced to the desk sergeant. And I've already filed paperwork with CPS for temporary custody of my niece, Zuri Johnson. Behind her stood a distinguished older man carrying a leather briefcase. I'm Theodore Washington, Ms. Johnson's attorney. He introduced himself. We'd like to see her immediately. 20 minutes later, Amara was embracing her sister in a small conference room, tears flowing freely for the first time since the ordeal began. They took Zuri, she sobbed against Desiree's shoulder. They just took her from me in the park like I was some kind of criminal. I know. Desiree soothed, her own anger barely contained. But she's safe. I spoke with a CPS worker. They're bringing her to my house within the hour. And I'm taking you home too. Amara pulled back in surprise. They're releasing me. Theodore Washington nodded. The witness video that supposedly showed neglect has been contradicted by another witness with time-stamped footage. Furthermore, the reporting witness has a documented history of making complaints against various community members, particularly people of color. Karen has done this before, Amara asked, stunned. Desiree's expression was grim. Mr. Washington made some calls. Apparently, Ms. Mitchell has filed complaints against the Hispanic family who opened a restaurant on her street, the Asian American teacher who didn't give one of her twins the lead in the school play, and the black facility manager at her country club. She's developing quite a reputation. They're not pressing charges, Mr. Washington continued, but there will still be a mandatory CPS investigation since a report was filed. It's standard procedure, but with the contradicting evidence and your clean record, it should be resolved quickly. Relief washed over Amara, followed immediately by renewed anxiety. How long until Zuri can come home with me? That depends on the CPS evaluation, Mr. Washington explained gently. They'll need to conduct a home visit and interview. Until then, she'll stay with your sister as the approved family member. Amara nodded, swallowing back fresh tears. At least she'll be with family. Is she okay? Desiree squeezed her hand. The social worker said she's been crying for you, but they've been kind to her. I brought her favorite stuffed elephant from your apartment, and I've got her bedroom all ready at my place. Detective Rivera entered the room with a stack of paperwork. Ms. Johnson, we need you to sign these release forms, and then you're free to go. I've spoken with the CPS caseworker assigned to your daughter's case. They'll be contacting you tomorrow to schedule the home evaluation. As Amara signed the documents, a thought struck her. What about Karen Mitchell? She filed a false report that separated me from my child and could have resulted in serious charges. There has to be some consequence for that. Detective Rivera exchanged a glance with Mr. Washington. That's complicated. If Ms. Mitchell genuinely believed your child was in danger, even if she was mistaken about the timing. This wasn't a mistake, Amara interrupted firmly. She deliberately misrepresented the situation. She claimed 20 minutes when it was less than 1. That's not an estimation error. It's a lie. If you wish to pursue action against Ms. Mitchell, we can discuss options, Mr. Washington offered. But right now, let's focus on getting you home and reunited with Zuri. Amara nodded, exhaustion suddenly overwhelming her. The adrenaline that had sustained her through the afternoon was fading, leaving bone-deep weariness in its wake. You're right. One battle at a time. As they left the police station, Amara was surprised to see a small group gathered on the sidewalk outside. Michael Chen was there, along with 2 women she recognized from the playground. They stepped forward as she emerged. Ms. Johnson, one of the women said, I'm Emily Winters. My son was playing with your daughter earlier today. I saw what happened, and I feel terrible that I didn't speak up immediately. I've given the police my statement now. The second woman nodded. I'm Tasha Reynolds. I've seen you and your daughter at the park many times. You're a great mom, and what happened today was completely unjustified. Amara blinked back tears. Thank you. It means a lot to hear that. Michael stepped forward awkwardly. I've started a community support page online. People are already sharing their experiences with similar situations and offering help. Would it be okay if I shared updates about your case? Only what you're comfortable with. Of course. Desiree handed him her business card. Contact me first. My sister's been through enough today. As they drove to Desiree's home, Amara stared out the window, processing the day's events. How did this happen? Des, 1 minute we're having a perfect day at the park, and the next, I'm handcuffed and separated from my child. All because a woman didn't like seeing me in her neighborhood. Desiree gripped the steering wheel tightly. It happened because it happens every day. Sis. Black parents are held to impossible standards and scrutinized at every turn. The system is designed to assume the worst of us first and ask questions later. But what do I do now? How do I ever feel safe taking Zuri to that park again? You don't retreat, Desiree said firmly. You stand your ground, and you don't stand alone. The next morning, Amara's story was everywhere. Michael's community support page had grown to over 2,000 members overnight. Local news stations were running segments on the incident, featuring interviews with witnesses from the park who corroborated Amara's account. Justice for Amara was trending on social media, alongside Dasha Karen's Calling 911, which had become a platform for sharing similar stories of racially motivated police calls. Zuri remained clingy after their reunion, unwilling to let Amara out of her sight even for a moment. The night had been difficult, with the little girl waking from nightmares, crying for her mother. But they were together now, temporarily staying at Desiree's spacious home while the CPS investigation proceeded. Ms. Johnson, the CPS caseworker, a middle-aged woman named Letitia Coleman, sat across from Amara at Desiree's dining room table. I want you to understand that my priority is Zuri's well-being. From everything I've reviewed so far, including multiple witness statements and your exemplary record as a healthcare professional, I have no immediate concerns about your parenting. Amara released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Thank you. However, Ms. Coleman continued, protocol requires me to complete a full evaluation, including a home visit and interviews with Zuri's daycare providers. The earliest I can close this case is next week. So Zuri has to stay here until then. She can't come home with me. Ms. Coleman's expression softened. Actually, given the circumstances and my preliminary assessment, I'm prepared to recommend that Zuri return to your custody immediately, with follow-up visits to complete the formal evaluation. There's no reason to prolong the separation. Tears of relief sprang to Amara's eyes. Thank you. You have no idea what that means to us. After completing the necessary paperwork, Ms. Coleman departed with a promise to schedule the home visit for the following week. Amara sank onto the couch, overwhelmed by the emotional whiplash of the past 24 hours. Desiree joined her, laptop in hand. You should see what's happening online, sis. Your story has struck a nerve. People are organizing a community gathering at Oakwood Park this weekend, a family picnic, and show of support. Amara shook her head in disbelief. I never wanted to be the center of attention like this. Sometimes we don't choose our moments. They choose us, Desiree replied. And speaking of moments, there's something else you should know. She turned the laptop to show Amara a news article with Karen Mitchell's photo. The headline read, Woman who called 911 on Black mother has history of false reports. Police say. Amara scanned the article. After Michael and other witnesses had come forward with their accounts, the police had reviewed Karen's history of calls and complaints. The pattern was undeniable over a dozen reports in the past year alone, predominantly targeting people of color for minor or completely fabricated infractions. They're investigating her for filing false reports, Desiree explained, and the DA is considering pressing charges for misuse of emergency services. I don't want revenge, Amara said quietly. I just want to ensure she never puts another family through what we experienced. It's not about revenge, it's about accountability, Desiree countered. And speaking of accountability, Mr. Washington called this morning. He believes you have grounds for a civil suit against both Karen Mitchell and potentially the police department for their handling of the situation. Amara shook her head. I can't afford a lawsuit. Des, you don't have to. 3 civil rights organizations have already reached out offering pro bono representation. This case exemplifies exactly the kind of racial bias in policing and child welfare that they fight against. Before Amara could respond, Zuri toddled into the room, rubbing sleep from her eyes after her nap. Mommy, can we go home now? Amara scooped her daughter into her arms, inhaling the sweet scent of baby shampoo and innocence. Yes, baby. We can go home very soon. By Saturday, 4 days after the incident, Amara's story had transcended local news to become part of a national conversation. Morning shows featured discussions on living while Black and the weaponization of police calls against people of color. Op-eds examined the intersection of racism and child welfare policies. Mothers across the country shared their own experiences of being judged, reported, or questioned while parenting in public spaces. The community gathering at Oakwood Park had transformed from a simple picnic into a family-friendly rally for justice. When Amara arrived with Zuri and Desiree, she was astonished to find hundreds of people wearing purple ribbons, the color of Zuri's overalls from that fateful day. Now, a symbol of solidarity. Michael Chen approached, looking both pleased and slightly embarrassed by the turnout his online organizing had produced. "Ms. Johnson, thank you for coming. Would you be willing to say a few words? People would really like to hear from you directly." Amara hesitated. Public speaking had never been her forte, and the idea of addressing this crowd made her palms sweat. But when she looked around at the diverse gathering families of all races coming together to support her, she found her courage. "I'll speak," she agreed, "but briefly, and I'd like Zuri to stay with my sister while I do." Standing on the small temporary stage that had been erected near the playground, Amara took a deep breath as the crowd quieted. "Thank you all for coming today," she began, her voice stronger than she expected. 4 days ago, I was handcuffed and taken from this park while my 3-year-old daughter screamed for me. My crime was being a black mother whose child walked to the water fountain. Murmurs of support rippled through the crowd. What happened to me happens every day to parents of color across this country. We are over-policed, over-reported, and presumed guilty of neglect or abuse for normal parenting moments that white parents experience without scrutiny. Amara paused, gathering her thoughts. But something different happened in my case. People spoke up. Witnesses came forward. Community members rallied around us. And because of that, my daughter and I are together again. Her voice wavered slightly. I'm grateful beyond words for that support. She looked out at the sea of faces. I don't want what happened to me to happen to anyone else. I don't want any child to experience the trauma my daughter endured being separated from her parent based on a false report. And I don't want the person who made that report to simply move on to target someone else. That's why I've decided to pursue every legal avenue available to hold accountable both the individual who made the false report and the system that acted on it without proper investigation. Not for revenge, but for reform. Applause erupted, along with cheers and calls of support. This isn't just about one incident, or one family, Amara continued once the noise subsided. It's about creating communities where everyone can exist without fear, where a black mother can watch her child play in the park without wondering if someone is calling 911, where children of all races can make normal childhood mistakes without their parents being criminalized. She gestured to the playground behind her. This park belongs to all of us. This community belongs to all of us. And together, we can make it safe for everyone. Thank you. The crowd's response was immediate and overwhelming. As Amara stepped down from the stage, people pressed forward to offer hugs, words of encouragement, and promises of ongoing support. Among those waiting to speak with her was the city's mayor, who had arrived midway through her speech. "Ms. Johnson," he said, extending his hand, "I want to personally apologize for what you and your daughter experienced. My office is launching a review of police protocols for responding to these types of calls, and we'd like your input as we develop new training and procedures." Before Amara could respond, a commotion near the park entrance caught everyone's attention. A news crew was filming as police officers escorted someone to a waiting cruiser. Even from a distance, Amara recognized Karen Mitchell's rigid posture and designer sunglasses. "What's happening?" she asked the mayor, who was receiving updates via text. He looked up from his phone. Mitchell apparently came to the park with the intention of disrupting today's gathering. She was attempting to distribute flyers containing false information about you. When confronted by park security, she became belligerent. They've arrested her for trespassing and harassment, given that there's now a restraining order in place. Amara watched as Karen was placed in the police car. The irony of the moment not lost on her. The same system that had so readily believed Karen's false accusations was now holding her accountable for her actions. "Is Mommy in trouble again?" Zuri's small voice came from behind her. Amara turned to find her daughter looking anxiously at the police car. Kneeling to eye level with Zuri, Amara shook her head. "No, baby. Mommy's not in trouble. And you know what? I don't think we'll have to worry about that happening again." Jussie. 1 month later, Amara sat in Theodore Washington's office, reviewing the settlement offer from the city. The terms were better than she had dared hope. A formal apology from the police department, policy changes for responding to calls involving children, mandatory bias training for all officers, and a significant monetary settlement that would ensure Zuri's college education was fully funded. "They're eager to resolve this quickly," Mr. Washington explained. "Your case has garnered too much attention for them to risk taking it to court." "And Karen?" Amara asked. Ms. Mitchell accepted a plea deal on the charges of filing a false police report and misuse of emergency services. She'll serve no jail time, but has been sentenced to 200 hours of community service, mandatory diversity training, and 2 years probation. She's also permanently barred from contacting you or your family. Amara nodded, feeling not satisfaction, but a quiet sense of closure. "What about the civil suit against her?" "Her insurance has offered a settlement as well, which I recommend accepting. Between the two settlements, you'll have enough to move to a new home in a neighborhood of your choosing, if that's what you want." Amara considered this. In the weeks following the incident, she had wrestled with whether to stay in Westlake Heights. Part of her wanted to flee, to find a community where she and Zuri wouldn't feel like outsiders under constant scrutiny. But another part, the part that had found her voice on that stage in Oakwood Park, resisted the idea of being driven away. "I'm not moving," she decided firmly. "This is our home now. We have a community here, people who stood up for us when it mattered. I won't let one person's actions take that away from us." Mr. Washington smiled approvingly. "In that case, might I suggest using part of the settlement to establish a community foundation, something focused on bringing neighbors together and promoting understanding across racial lines?" The idea resonated deeply. "I'd like that. Something positive that could prevent other families from experiencing what we did." Later that afternoon, Amara and Zuri returned to Oakwood Park for the first time since the gathering. Amara had deliberately avoided it, unsure if she could separate the space from the trauma associated with it. But Zuri had been asking, and Amara knew they couldn't avoid it forever. As they approached the playground, Amara felt her chest tighten with anxiety. She forced herself to breathe deeply, reminding herself that they had every right to be there. "Slide. Mommy." Zuri pointed excitedly, seemingly unbothered by returning to the scene of their ordeal. Children were resilient in ways adults could only envy. "Go ahead, baby. I'm watching you," Amara said, settling onto what had been her usual bench. As Zuri played, several parents approached Amara one by one. Some were familiar faces from the gathering, others were new to her. Each offered a warm welcome, an introduction, an invitation for playdates or coffee. One mother handed Amara a business card for the newly formed Westlake Heights Neighborhood Association under new leadership. She explained with a meaningful look. By the time they were ready to leave, Amara had exchanged phone numbers with 3 other mothers and made plans for Zuri to attend a birthday party the following weekend. As they walked home, hand in hand, Amara felt something she hadn't experienced in this neighborhood before, a sense of truly belonging. "Did you have fun, Zuri?" she asked, watching her daughter skip alongside her. "Uh-huh. Can we come back tomorrow?" Zuri asked. Chocolate ice cream from the same vendor smudged around her mouth. Amara smiled, the weight she had been carrying for weeks finally beginning to lift. "Yes, baby. We can come back tomorrow, and the day after that, and for as many days as you want. This is our park too." As they rounded the corner toward their apartment building, Amara spotted Michael Chen walking his dog. He waved enthusiastically when he saw them. "Ms. Johnson, I was hoping to run into you. The Community Foundation paperwork is ready for your review whenever you have time." "Thank you, Michael, and please, call me Amara." He nodded, looking pleased. Amara. Then, "Oh, and the first meeting of the Neighborhood Watch is tonight, the new one focused on community support rather than surveillance. Several people were asking if you'd consider taking a leadership role." 6 months ago, such an invitation would have seemed impossible. 2 months ago, after the incident, she would have declined out of self-protection. But now, strengthened by adversity and surrounded by genuine allies, Amara found herself nodding. "I'd be honored," she replied. "After all, real community safety isn't about watching each other with suspicion. It's about watching out for each other with compassion." As they continued home, Zuri chattering happily about her playground adventures, Amara reflected on the journey that had brought them here. A moment of injustice had transformed into a movement for change. A trauma had become a catalyst for community building. And a mother and daughter, who had once felt like outsiders, had found their place, not by changing who they were, but by changing the world around them. One park bench, one playground, one neighborhood at a time. For the first time since moving to Westlake Heights, Amara felt truly at home. This was where they belonged, where they would stay, and where they would thrive, not despite what had happened, but because of how they and their community had risen above it. As if reading her thoughts, Zuri looked up at her mother with a chocolate-smeared smile. "I like our park, Mommy." Amara squeezed her daughter's small hand. "Me too, baby. Me too."